Welcome to Out of the Trance. I am back in Ericeira, and mine is Myranda Heipel. She is founder of Yogi Social and has a mission to demystify yogic practices and blend the science of these practices with the spirituality of the practices. So I'm so excited to be talking to her today. And we just met here in Ericeira, so I'm learning your story for the first time, or we had little drips of it, but I want to hear about your story, the work you're doing, and also just talk about, how we can eventually work together.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So let's just get started with Yogi Social and, how it came to be.
Yeah, wonderful question. There's a bit of a long journey to it, but started way back when I began my career in tech and recruitment, and made my way into tech startups and was head of people at different companies. And there's so much beauty in the world of tech, and I do really love it, and the possibilities of the impact it can have, particularly from an educational or a medical standpoint. But in the world of tech, and particularly in startup land, it's a high-paced, high-demand, high-stress world. And many of us, myself included, went through burnout. And that is an ugly roller coaster down. And coming back from that, I was able to use my practices. So fortunately, the whole time I've been in tech, I've also been practicing yoga and diving deeper into that world. And utilizing those practices, I was able to work through my own healing and my own growth. But it came to a place where I realized that these two worlds, they've always been so separate from each other, but they can actually really complement each other. And the idea behind the Yogi Social was wanting to bring these ancient practices into this new age world of tech to help support and supplement the ability to achieve whatever it is that this world is trying to go through. So whether that's actually building a company, building a product, helping the greater good, it came through there where I realized that these worlds didn't need to be separate, and that they actually could really use each other.
Amazing. I love that that understanding that they don't need to be separate. And they were separated, by the Cartesian split a long time ago, but they're so merged. So they started to merge for you. It sounds like even in your world they were separate. One was a passion and one was work. But when did you start to blend them? Was this after you had burnout, or was there a moment where you discovered, okay, I'm going to merge these things together, I'm going to leave the job behind?
Yeah, great question. So I think in my own life, I'd always utilized my practice. And when things got really intense at work, and I was working 14, sometimes 17-hour days, no matter what I did, I know. I know.
That's a long part of the day.
Don't calculate how many hours it is a week. But it got to a point where in order to actually get through that, I needed to rely on my practice. And everybody knew no matter what, the last hour of my day was my hour. And I closed everything off, all technology down, rolled my mat out, put on music, candles, Palo Santo, and whatever happened on that mat happened. Whether it was movement, stillness, sometimes I'd meditate, sometimes I would just lay there on the mat. But I needed that hour of decompression to regulate myself so that I could get up the next morning and do it all again.
6 hours later.
Yeah, about that. 5 hours, maybe 6
goodness.
hours. Yeah, I mean, through a stint of that, I was also competing in semi-pro sports, so a little bit of a high functioner. But
I was going to say.
Yeah, I do love it. But yes, so that was, for me, it was there and it was part of my practice, but I wasn't really putting the two together. It was just how I regulated myself. And then it was actually a moment on a bench here in Ericeira, down near Praia do Norte, and I was sitting there, and I had been really going through this push and pull of, there's this business side of me who wants to help technology companies advance and create impact and change in the world for good, and then there's this spiritual side of me who likes to spend time in the forest and connect with the land and connect with people's heart space. And I'd been really pulling back and forth between the two and struggling to be one person amongst that. And, what world do I belong in? And I never really felt fully accepted by either. And I had the epiphany moment on this bench where I realized that I'm not meant to belong to one space or the other. I think my purpose is to actually bridge the gap between them. And I think that's the moment where it clicked for me that I was like, okay, this is something I need to figure out how I do that. And because I know the world of tech so well and business, I think bringing those practices from that one side to the other, although it should go both ways, that I believe is where I serve my purpose, and I'm able to speak the language to that group.
And you were here in Ericeira. Were you on like a vacation or holiday, or were you already living here?
I had moved here, no residence permit yet, but I had moved here with the intention of staying here.
How long have you been here?
I came to Portugal for the first time 2 years ago.
Okay.
In and out with some visas and permit joys.
Yeah.
But yeah, first 2 years ago. And then Ericeira about a year and a half ago. And so I'd come here with the intention of being here. And the first time I came, it wasn't during that time, but I remember the energy of the space and just there was something here. Things were flowing in ways that they hadn't in years. And I knew that I was meant to stay here. And then, that moment happened not too long after that.
Okay. Very interesting. I love hearing people's like how and why they came to Ericeira stories. It's always something like that. I came here and something just started flowing, and I've had a similar experience in Portugal, actually, in general. But I wanted to ask you, so you were working in tech before that. Where were you?
In a few places.
Okay.
Started in Toronto, so I'm from Canada, and did between Toronto and LA with work. And then I went to Australia. I was in Sydney.
Oh, really?
And I worked for a company. Well, I worked for a few different companies while there, but Aussie-based, between Sydney and the last bit was in Hobart as well.
Okay.
And then, then made my way in a little bit of a stint through Bali and into Portugal, as many people do.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a well-worn path. I just got back from Bali, actually.
Yes, you spent the winter there, right?
Yes, yeah. I was going to try to do both places, but I'm just going to stay here now. Yeah. Okay, so were you and are you still working in tech, or did you just did you stop doing what you were doing to start this?
Yes, great question. No, I still work in it.
Okay.
So I took from going as a full-time employee in a company where as a head of people or a director of people, you get brought on around the Series A stage when they can invest in that role and they're looking to scale. But I found that was a bit too late in the process to bring on your people person because there had been so many fluctuations and there's so many promises to investors, et cetera. That the organized chaos was just not actually beneficial to the people of the organization. So I started doing that fractionally. So coming on earlier in the journey, helping at like 10 to 15 employees, where they need little bits of that structure in place so they can scale sustainably, but they don't actually need you full time yet. So I've been doing that for the last couple of years and work with some companies in that space. But very much looking at like impact-oriented spaces.
Okay, cool. So you're doing a more fractional type position. I love that because so people always wonder, like, how do you just get to move to Ericeira, right? Like, are you still working with them? So the fractional position, that's kind of a relatively new way to work, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it's funny, depending on where I am in the world when I say the word fractional, I either get the like, oh, yeah, I get that, or a complete blank stare at me like, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's kind of a new term, isn't it?
It is. It's interesting. It's an amalgamation of things that already exist because it's essentially like a freelancer meets a consultant.
Yep.
Because you're getting the expertise of a consultant, but the hands-on work of a freelancer.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what it is.
Exactly. I used to call myself a consultant, when I was doing that, but it was really, I was more fractional. But the term wasn't really out yet. So
yeah. And even still now, I think it's been introduced with getting like fractional C-suite level.
Yeah.
But honestly, anybody can be a fractional. It can be for any role because different projects require different legwork and different amounts of it. So, I think it will very quickly be adopted by all levels of work.
Yeah, and it's a good way. It's a good way to work and have your hands in a few things, and it's also great for the company. I mean, as a founder myself, I'd always struggle between do I take on like a freelancer or a full-time person and you have, this is like a happy medium in a way.
Yeah, definitely. I do. There's a lot of joy I take in it, the ability to create impact in multiple companies rather than just one. And obviously, seeing companies, particularly when they're small, who really need that help, like they'll be struggling and like starting to go underwater, and then when you can lift them back out of it and see how they grow and like the joy that also brings, it's really wonderful. The hardest part is when you are external, is finding that way to still be integrated in the team. And I've been very lucky with the clients that I've worked with. They've had a very strong purpose in that. And so they make sure that, I'm within their, whether it's their Slack, their communication, they see a great purpose in what I do. So it's really lovely.
And I imagine all of the skills that you have, gained and fostered in that environment are really helping you as you do basically a startup, right?
Yeah.
Do you consider it that,
definitely.
or do you still feel like it's a side hustle?
I don't know. I feel like my life is full of side hustles. So at one point, I'm going to have to accept that.
Put it right here.
Maybe one of them is something more than a side hustle. For the Yogi Social, I feel like it's interesting because the intention of it initially was just that moment on the bench where I was like, okay, like I need to bring this into this world and I need to figure out how to do it. And it wasn't through the people operations business because that it serves its own purpose, and some of that language still comes through no matter what. My way of being is my way of being. I can't change that when I'm working with clients. But the intention of that work is still different. And so, the idea coming into it was, just wanting to create that impact and to help people help themselves, essentially. And I've never thought of it as a business in a way. But I think it probably is a good idea to take that lens on it at times to see how it can grow and how you can pull people together because, as we had mentioned before, I see it as a collective. It's not me, it's not my name, it's not, Myranda creating this. It's a collective of people who have an interest in blending spirituality and science and sharing that knowledge and utilizing people who have, say, like a neuroscientist who's coming, say, to my retreat next week, and someone who has that depth of study and knowledge and pulling pieces from them and sharing it. And I see it as a really communal effort to achieve that.
And as you were, using these practices in your life and they were so beneficial for you, were you like, I need to know why this is working, or or were you like, the why helped it work for you?
That's a great question. And I think actually that's probably what motivates me, but also excites me by doing it in this manner is, for me, there's definitely a logical piece. I have a side of me that can switch off at times and just be in the moment, go with the flow, and not try to explain it. But a very big part of me likes to understand. The logical brain kicks in. It's like, what's happening? Why is it happening? And that's a lot of the intention here is then when you go with the science, it's like, okay, now I can understand what's happening physiologically in my being. Yeah. So when I go through it and I feel this impact, it's like, okay, that does serve me, or maybe it doesn't, which is fine too. And you can figure out really what practices you can utilize for different times of day, different energy levels, different meetings, etc. And that to me, like, knowledge is power. Yeah. And that is incredibly powerful to be able to know what tools you can take out of your toolbox and when.
Yeah. And I think when you're doing a process that is, some things, and I want to talk more about like the specific processes because I'm interested in this too. I like yoga. And of course, meditation, we know a lot about the neuroscience with it. And I apply a lot of neuroscience-led understanding and neuroplasticity research to hypnotherapy. So with yoga, though, as you learn what's supposed to be happening, it kind of helps that happen. And that's what I noticed with like my processes I do through hypnotherapy. Like when the client, knows why we're visualizing something, it's like, okay, this sounds like oversimplified. And they're like, why am I even doing this? But when you can explain why and what's happening in their brain and why that visualization does something and, the brainwave state that we're working on, it's like, okay, we're still doing the same thing. But now because you're like engaged with what's supposed to be happening or where this generated from, they actually get more out of it. So I imagine it's the same with yoga.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, having that level of understanding just helps you in any process, to your point, that you're in, and knowing what the impacts are and why you're doing it. I think why is a big thing for humans in general.
Absolutely.
And we're always looking for that, which most of the time serves a purpose. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I was going to say, we're meaning-making machines. So what does this mean? Why am I doing it?
Yeah, exactly. And with yoga, what's interesting, so the first thing that came to my mind, which I'd love to share, is that yoga itself is actually a very big umbrella. And often, you're nodding because I know you know, often people, when you say yoga, they think of the closest studio when they've gone to a yoga class, which is physical. But that's actually an asana practice, is the physical practice. And yoga has multiple things underneath it, including meditation, breath, pranayama, stillness. There's so many pieces, even like the removal of your interaction with the outside world is a piece of yoga as well, and that's a practice. So I think within that, when we come to the physical movement then of yoga, and I think more relevant to the question you're asking, that also to me, it's not just movement, because when I teach in particular, and different yoga teachers will have different styles, of course, mine is very much around the mind-body connection. And so there's a constant flow. So it's an up, down, up regulation that you go through versus separating the mind and the body. And so you're connecting the two of them, which pulls in lots of pieces when it comes to the science aspect of it. So, I think it is interesting, because then it's not just the movement piece of it, but it's also what is the breath doing as you're moving? How is your mind stillness affecting your body as you're moving? So I feel like it might be a little more multifaceted than just the physical piece.
It sounds like very educational.
There's so much, honestly. I feel like for myself, like I've scraped the surface, and then there's just so much depth to it, and I feel like an infant in a way around my knowledge of it.
I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating how much there can be, and you can study one specific area of the brain, of the body, and yeah, it's a really, to your point, an opportunity for education, for sure.
And how do you facilitate that education? Is it through workshops? Is it through your class? I mean, I know you're doing this retreat, and I know I want to hear more about the retreat, because I know there's a big education component to that. So how do you facilitate that with the practice? And, and when you talk about the practice, are you just mostly doing the physical, or are you working on the other pillars?
Yeah, great question. So up to date, what I've done is incorporating into my classes, definitely little pieces here and there. I love to actually start a class off with like a little bit of like a chunk of either the history or where that style came from, or a little educational piece so they understand what's happening, particularly with the mind-body connection, because that's my big thing with students when I'm teaching. And then that's like, it'd be a few little facts kind of thing, because you don't want to give too much information, particularly if they've come for a movement class. And then the intention is to actually have workshops that will be bite-sized versions of what this retreat will be. So at the retreat, as I mentioned, bringing on a neuroscientist to really dive deep into it. And we're breaking down all of the practices. So one workshop will be strictly on the science behind movement. And then she'll go through everything from what's happening in your entire being, from your nervous system through to your brain, what changes, what shifts, and how you can use that practice in different ways to activate different pieces of your brain. And then what we're doing is she'll give a little bit of micro practices during that one as well. So it's not just, sitting there for 3 hours listening to information. We're making it both theoretical and practical. And then tying that in, though, with a practice that I'll do in the mornings. That's an extended version of that. So each morning will shift. So if there's a workshop on the movement, then the next morning practice will be an hour of movement. And if it's on breath, then it's an hour of breath. And that way it's like they get to understand what's happening. You get a bite-sized practice that you can take home with you and integrate into your days. But then you also get this longer version of it where you really go deep into it, and you can have some really profound impacts on your being. And then at the end of it, of course, movement, breath, stillness, meditation, they're not all going to necessarily serve someone. But at the end, we'll reflect on what does work and then figure out how we integrate those specific practices at whatever times it would serve you into your day.
Amazing. And I imagine people are really hungry for the knowledge.
I think so. I feel that the world it's shifting quite a bit into being aware of it. And some people are quite curious. Others, I think, still in that point where they're like, I'm not sure exactly what this is. Is it woo-woo? Is it, there's a little bit of resistance still there. But that is the idea with the science piece, to show how it is in a lens that we do currently understand. And it's not, yes, you can go into the depth of spirituality. Of course, it's a big, beautiful world, but you don't have to in order to utilize the benefits of these practices. So yeah, I think more and more we're seeing it. We're seeing calls for it. We're seeing people, unfortunately, more and more going through burnout, more and more struggling. What's the stat? 8 out of 10 startups fail. Like it's a beautiful but vicious world at the same time. And I think people are looking for ways to better themselves, not only productivity and clarity in work, but also their overall wellness. One of the good things that came out of COVID, which was a very unfortunate circumstance, was showing how we can work remotely. Yeah. And that's amazing. Companies had to adapt really quickly. Not all facets of work can do that, of course, but many had just had to and learned how to do that. But through that, now it's like, okay, well, where do our priorities lie? People started to be like, well, why do I have to commute an hour into work? Right. If I stay home, I can get my laundry done in between meetings. Then all of a sudden, I actually have a weekend. And so that shift of where does my energy need to go during the day? What is actually serving me in life? Like, do I live to work or do I work to live? And with all of that, I think this world has opened up to, okay, how do I improve my wellness? How do I take care of myself? How do I function outside of just being an employee at a company?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that time was a big shift in consciousness. Obviously, the manifestation of that as the pandemic, and then also the aftermath, right? And what kind of needed to happen is because I think we were going on like a collision course towards, where technology was speeding up so we wouldn't have to work as hard, but we're still like working that hard and, really out of balance. And I think a lot of people were just like, oh, I've got a taste of this balance now. I'm not going to do that anymore because, we ask a lot of times we just do things because that's the way things are. And then it's like, wait, why would I do that? Right? Maybe I don't even need as much money as I thought. Maybe, maybe I make my own sourdough now. I don't know. But I think that it was a big question mark for a lot of people, which I think was, kind of part of this shift in consciousness around time in general, how we use it, what's what, because I think it's flipped a lot of people's reality up and down. So that hunger, I guess, comes from a lot of different places.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's all the things you're saying there just completely resonate with me. I was like, yes, yes. Even the statement, what really stuck with me there when you said doing things in a way because that's just the way that it's always been done. And I think that statement in general has been flipped upside down in the past years. And I know the world of like tech startups, they want to disrupt the system. And that's a main motto in that space. But it's not only applied in the workspace, it's also applied to ourselves now. And just realizing that, at one point in time, it served a purpose of working in a company. You woke up, you went to work, you came back, you took care of your family. It was small communities. People supported each other in that community. And now the world is just so vast and available to us. And technological advancements give us the ability to be in touch with anyone, anywhere in the world. And for those who are fortunate, the ability to travel anywhere in the world. And we have all of this opportunity. But now it's like, okay, what do I do with it? Where do I choose to be? How do I live in this world? And we weren't trained to do that.
Right. We were trained really not to do that. Right. And even the separation of science and spirituality, there's a variety of reasons and a variety of consequences of that. Right. So we split off, that science is very different than spirit. It's happened years ago with the church, and now because of all this, of all the stuff we're talking about, and I think where we are in the wheel of time, those things are starting to really come back together.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, it's the science of yoga was sort of, that sort of the knowledge was actually really important to the practices. And when we separated them, so like, for example, now there's so many people who are doing mindfulness and they're like, I'm doing this for stress. I'm doing mindfulness, but it's like the why behind it, not brought into it, kind of taking the sort of a little bit of the cosmology out. It becomes just a process. But when you kind of merge the wisdom with it, it's becomes a little bit more meaningful to people because we are, as we said, meaning-making machines. So it's like, okay, this fits in a really different way than I thought. Like, it's not just for reducing my stress. It's for connecting me with something bigger, and that in turn reduces my stress. Yeah. So it really, they weren't designed to be split off.
No, and quite honestly, I feel that like when we talk about the terminology or the wisdom that's there, and the way that we speak about it now, I honestly feel like we often are talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
We just use different language.
Yeah.
I talk about my prana and chakras, and that's your central nervous system. And there's just so much that crosses over there that when you stop and think about what you're doing and to your point, why you're doing it and where that comes from, it's like, oh, wait, like I'm actually just doing something that someone did 1,000 years ago, but the reason I got to doing it is different. So back then they were intentional. Well, I can't speak to that, actually. Let me take that back. I wasn't there 1,000 years ago. I can't say why. But from what we read on the practices, they were intentional. They served a purpose for, yes, their spiritual growth and development and betterment of being, and then their connection to the divine or to whomever it was that they felt connected with. And then for us, we've overworked ourselves and we're stressed and burning out, and we need to find a way to fix that and like retract and come back to ourselves, to our whole and like healthy beings. And we're using these same practices. But in a way, we are looking to do and achieve the same thing. We just started doing it for different reasons.
Yeah. No, that's a great way of looking at it. We kind of came at it from a different angle, but we're going back to a similar place. It's funny because a lot of the wisdom and the mythology, right? A lot of it's metaphor for understanding that this central nervous system, our brain, is really an antenna, right? So the more we start to understand how we work, from a nervous system level, from an antenna level, just whatever frequencies we're in tune with out there, and then we start to understand how the universe works, it's quite scientific. But there's been a lot of mythology as metaphor to explain it. And now when you start to merge those two worlds, like, and see the patterns that you can connect, you're like, hold on, these things are totally related. There are myths that are trying to explain to us, like, about our third eye. They're creating characters, but these are parts of ourself. So I have found that to be, because I started doing one where I was like, I'm just going to go down the science angle. And then I'm like, wait a second, I'm learning through myth and metaphor about how I work, right? And I think a lot of ancient traditions and religion and yoga and, the way that the ancients explained it was to help people understand their, how they work. So I find that those worlds kind of coming together now are great because we have knowledge and wisdom, and then we have techniques, and they are different, but then they merge.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a very, very good point. It has my brain like reeling now.
Well, with the techniques, for example, they are a technology, right? And you come from the tech world. So when you think of like these psycho-spiritual technologies, or even just psychotechnologies, breath work, psychedelics, hypnosis, pranayama breath work, I said, visualization. These are alchemical processes that used to be like taught to people through wisdom and knowledge and a lot of time metaphor and myth. And then they went and they did the processes. So in the West, we're like, okay, hold on, these things are really great and they're working. And now we got to kind of figure out why they're working, because there's, the science angle of it. And it's like, wait, these people have been doing this for years. I always joke because, do you know Andrew Huberman? He's a neuroscientist or an ophthalmologist, and he's really into hypnosis. But every now and then, like, I'll have a friend call me and she'll be like, oh, I listened to this great podcast and he was talking about like exhaling. And like, did you know that exhaling does this and this and this to your vagus nerve? And I'm like, I feel like yoga teachers have been saying this for years, but we need somebody who's faculty at Stanford to be like, you should be exhaling long. Like, it's so funny. Like when I include myself in that, like, oh yeah, like visualizing something to happen could make it happen. It's like, oh, there's science to it. It's like, I've been daydreaming since I was a kid. So it's almost like this, like, yeah, this works. And now we're like learning why. And I think that's very, very exciting, the time we're in.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because I know you said that a lot of yoga teachers have been talking about, say, the exhaling for longer to activate the vagus nerve. And while I do agree there are many teachers who have that knowledge and share it, I also think that there may not be as many that we think sharing that intentionally with that specific knowledge. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course. And when I think about the ancient practices and when they were around, they were doing it because they knew in one way that it was serving them, but not necessarily that it was activating their vagus nerve and that activated their parasympathetic nervous system and then calmed down to go into the rest and digest. But I feel like internally in some way they were aware of the benefits of what was happening, and now we're just putting terminology to it to understand it. It's interesting because I'm now thinking, I'm like, it's beautiful to understand it, but sometimes we can dissect a little too far.
Sure,
with
yeah.
it. And, but it's amazing to have obviously the technology to be able to go in and see what's happening and knowing it. And there's a second part of that you had mentioned that I wanted to touch on, and now I've lost it.
Yeah, I went off on a tangent there.
No, I love it. It's so good. I was like, oh, this is a good piece. This is a good piece. Oh, no.
We'll come back to it.
We'll come back.
Yes. But I wanted to actually kind of go into like a few of like the techniques that you found like most profound from just an experience point of view, but also from like this is what this does and this is why this is beneficial to me. Like what are your favorites that kind of like gave you that aha?
What are the favorites? It's funny because breath is actually probably one of the most powerful tools that I've utilized. Breath and stillness, to be honest, like the focus. And with breath, we actually just mentioned it around the aspect of the activating the parasympathetic nervous system and understanding what either longer exhales do or like a breath retention. Because for me, and as a personal experience, I got like flipped upside down as a kid in the water and like almost drowned. I couldn't see, and I swam the wrong way. and it was a really traumatizing experience.
Yeah, wow.
And since then, trying to like hold my breath, there's something about it that really scares me.
Of course.
And even utilizing, so breath retention will help get your mind into a state of safety in that space and increase like the CO2 in your brain. And so those two pieces of the longer breath, the exhaling, to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, going into rest and digest, and then the breath retention as well. I think those have been incredibly powerful for me because we operate in a state where we are on the go a lot, and I know I'm high functioning, so I'm constantly reeling and moving forwards. But breath is what slows me down to like come back into my center, to come back into what's happening internally and pull away from what's happening externally. So that's actually been a really, really big one for me. And it's something so simple as, because people are like, oh, what is pranayama or breath? Like, I'm breathing. Well, that's fine. Would I just breathe out for a little bit longer? But to consciously stop, turn everything off from the outside, like come into your state of being first, and then just maybe, honestly, 3 to 5 minutes of something like a box breath to where you do equal inhale, hold, exhale, hold is something incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Because also the piece of that is the concentration. So the breath does one thing, of course, but the other piece is actually your focus, because you don't recognize how much attention you then take to counting that breath.
Right.
And so something as unknowing as that is actually incredibly powerful.
Right. There's so much to it because your attention's everywhere when you're, in anxiety. And when you can bring your attention close in, it will slow down your attentional system, redirect it because it becomes disorganized.
Yes.
And then the breath itself. So you could probably break that down into like pages and pages, couldn't you?
Yeah, there's so many pieces. And attention is something that I think we really struggle with as a society in general. Because we're overstimulated. There's you look in every direction and there's color or movement or social media or sound or whatever it might be, and that focus, that attention is so critical to your nervous system and to that calm. And that comes through things, so say breath work or meditation, but also the movement practice as well. So for me, what I found really served me in movement was understanding that my attention was actually always switched on. And I think we may have talked about this in a prior conversation, but I'd always known that my brain was a little bit special, but got properly diagnosed with ADHD last summer. And on that is what has also spiraled the journey of me of understanding my brain, how it functions. And I recognize that my practice is actually what has helped me serve the disruption of attention that I would have. Because when you're going through an asana practice, you are constantly thinking about every piece of your body. So when you pop into like a warrior 2 posture, it's not just like, okay, I'm standing, I'm facing this way, and like my hips are here, my arms are out. It's like from your feet to your ankles, to your knees, to your hips, to your ribs, to your shoulders, to your chest, to your arms, to your gaze. And then you start back over again, because by the time you get all the way to the top of your head, your feet have shifted. Yeah. So you are actually always switched on. It's just a matter of where you are actually targeting your attention.
Right. And where your attention goes, as they say, your energy flows. And, it sounds like also, with the breath and, the grounding and stillness, you're also recreating safety. And I've been learning, safety in the body. Mm-hmm. And I've been learning a lot recently about how the attentional system is really linked to early attachment, attunement, and safety. But the cool thing is that we can actually, through embodiment exercises and, meditation, you can actually repair attachment injury and create safety in your nervous system, which immediately affects up here and the attentional system. And I think that is something that I've actually experienced recently. I think I told you, I've never been diagnosed, but I surely have ADD, and I've leaned into it. But I've been really interested in like, where does it come from and how do I build that? And I'm working on that through my meditation practice. But with clients now, when I work with them on a certain hypnotherapy practice, I'm also like, okay, let's bring the breath in and let's actually like build that in the body, so that we can actually bring down the lack of focus. And it's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that, where did it come from? It came from maybe feeling like I need to be alert. I need to be on edge. So it's like kind of from the bottom up, instead of the top down, where we often look to fix it. It's like, okay, let's do something with the attentional system. No, let's do something with the root system that brings this into homeostasis or balance. But I think that relationship I never knew about, and discovering this through a blend of spirituality and, Buddhist practices, but with the science that goes with it and a little bit of developmental psychology thrown in there. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many perspectives on attention in general. And it's such a problem for people now.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely a struggle for many, and just in varying degrees, right? And every day is different too. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm here and then every day's there and I work from that. Like, yeah, it changes each day. And you mentioned a couple things that stuck with me there. One, the aspect around the safety piece, that's a huge one. I think I read, I believe there was a study done in Harvard, and it was something like 12 minutes of meditation a day can actually change the gray matter in your brain around like your hippocampus. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that's around the space of safety and feeling safe and held, which is phenomenal.
That's amazing. And I believe it because, you know, as I said, I'm kind of exploring like the merging of, you know, some of these hypnotherapy practices. And there's a guy called Dan Brown, not the writer of the Da Vinci Code. He was a attachment therapist, but he worked with basically like he had a meditation he has several meditations, but there was one that was studied that basically in 6 weeks through putting yourself in, you know, a relaxed state of meditation, using, you know, focus meditation, embodiment, but then using like a practice that I would use in hypnotherapy where you bring in like a certain resource. So that resource was ideal parents. So if people had, you know, attachment injuries, bringing in ideal parents, I use like a wise mentor, but bringing in whatever archetype that you needed and actually just going through scenes with this archetype, whether it be the mentor or the ideal parent. And in 6 weeks using, you know, the imaginal process with the meditation and that psychotechnology, people were able to repair these attachment injuries in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I just think that's so amazing and hopeful because, you know, these things come up in dating, they come up in everything. So I love that you brought up that because I think like merging these two things, like the actual process with, you know, some sort of exercise, you know, when you're in that state is, there's so many psychotechnologies and there's so many ways of meditating that we often are just like, okay, it's just sitting there and doing one thing, but there are so many different things we can do with it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And it just makes me think when we mentioned that around there's so many different types of meditation too. It's so common that people are like, well, I can't sit still and think about nothing for an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not what meditation is. I'm like, if you go for a walk and you just focus on walking, I'm like, you're doing a walking meditation. If you go for a swim and all you're focused on is the water on your body and interacting with the ocean, it's a move like
Right.
like asana practice. It's a moving meditation. So yeah, we have these ideas around what these practices are, and it's just they're so much simpler than we actually think of them to be, and so much more vast as well at the same time. So there's a lot of opportunity to explore them in ways that serve you, and it's not just like this little box that you have to fit into in order to meditate.
Yeah, and I love that you said that they're simpler and more vast at the same time because it's that simplicity of like, okay, like when do I do this? Like, okay, I'm freaking out. Is there a breath I can do? Is there like a tapping I can do? And you can learn a technique that could take you 5 minutes that can take you out of a panic attack. And it's really simple, but it's like a vast, there's a vast explanation for why that works. So it's really simple, but really intricate at the same time. I guess most big truths are, but I love that piece of simplification, and as your mission is to demystify and give practices to people that they can take with them. Yeah. What are some like short practices?
So two ideas, I would say, depending on the scenario that you're in. One is the fixated attention, so going into a meditation where you're fixated on your breath, say. Not that you're changing your breath or doing anything with it in the sense of a box breath, but that you're fixated on it, because then that pulls your attention from all these areas just into you. And that's often how I start practices. I just get people to tune into their own breath. Don't try to change it. Don't judge it. Maybe it's deep. Maybe it's shallow. Maybe it's in your chest. Maybe it's in your belly. That doesn't matter. It's just acknowledging it where it is in that moment and being with it, being present with it. So that's a great way to pull yourself in, especially in a moment where things are constantly swirling around you. But for some people, and honestly what serves me sometimes is a stillness practice, which a lot of people, and myself included, when I first tried it, I thought it was like I had to lay there still and be silent, like it was like a laying meditation in a way. But in a stillness practice, you're physically meant to be still, but your mind can be anywhere. And so that's actually a moment where your mind is reeling in what many times I thought would be a negative thing, because you're like, oh, aren't I supposed to be calming my mind? But you're calming your body, and then by your physical body allowing it to relax, your mind can work through what it needs to, but your physical being is actually moving into a different state. So I find it depends on where I'm at exactly, but those two are ways I find to serve that.
I like that you said that actually about the physiology can affect the mind, because we there's a lot in the the manifestation world of your mind affects your body, which is absolutely true. But I have found with like phobias and fears in hypnotherapy, actually, if you can change the physiology, it can go the other way. So like if you're, for example, afraid to get on a flight, right, your mind is going to play all sorts of movies for you about it, and it's going to cause sweating, and you might have something like this, or you might sit like this. But you can actually get it to go the other way by being like, okay, I'm going to relax the body, because when my body is relaxed, my mind, usually it's a result of my mind being relaxed. But if I can do it first, the mind will catch on and be like, oh, we're doing relaxed stuff, And I believe that's a nervous system response. But I actually discovered this when I would drink coffee. I drank too much coffee. I drink coffee now, but I have a relationship with coffee where it's like there's a fine line. And I know when I've had too much coffee, because suddenly there's physiology with it. I'm like, a little bit sweatier or whatever. But suddenly, like, I'll start thinking differently. I'll start feeling like anxiety, like impending doom. Like my thoughts will be really different if I've had too much. And it's like, hold on, this has just changed my physiology, right? My heart is racing more because I've drinking more caffeine. Like my heart rate's, up. I'm like a little bit more like, looking around. But my thoughts will be different. They'll be like, something's going to happen. But I did the physiology first. So I realized, okay, like don't drink so much coffee. But we can actually, through making our body still, like in a practice like that, it can actually start to quiet the mind slowly. And I think that there is a lot to that, because we often are like, okay, if I can't quiet my mind, all bets are off. I'm off the cushion.
Yeah, definitely. And that's part of the practice with mind-body connection is, often to your point, we try to utilize the mind, and common therapy techniques are to utilize the mind to then help the body. But the asana, the physical practice, goes both ways. It's top down and bottom up. So it creates this loop, which is also helpful for like regulation as well. So yeah, it's a huge thing to go both ways, because our body isn't just one direction.
Right. Yeah, it's quite spiral.
Yeah, definitely.
And it reminds me of like the body, the mind going and the body asleep. There's have you heard of the Monroe Institute in the U.S.?
I feel like I've heard that, but
yeah, it's where like they did all of this remote viewing, but basically it's HemiSync was their kind of technology that they created, and it was using sound and certain hertz, and there was like a balance of them through the right and the left headphone, so use headphones with it, and the right and the left hemisphere. And it would be to sync your hemispheres through like the difference between the two. And when they did that, they would get you on a certain frequency. And one of the frequencies, there would be certain levels, and that different levels of mind, as they called it, you would be able to feel different things. And I did this practice, a little bit of it. I did like an intro, and I was like, wow, this is really specific. So there was one that was called Mind Awake, Body Asleep, right? And I just listened to the frequencies, I followed the instructions, and I was like, this is not a meditation, a similar meditation that I've done before, but like, wow, my body is like, I could move it, but it was pretty like hard to move, and my mind was awake. And the idea is that you go and you can, do certain things at certain levels. But I was like, wow, this is incredibly regenerative. And I found that afterwards it was really regenerating, but my mind wasn't that quiet during it.
Yeah.
So it's that demystifying or that misconception that we have to quiet our minds to meditate.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's near impossible, to be honest, to move into it. I mean, there are people who can do it, and I hope they can teach the world their techniques. But it's very difficult. It's difficult for me. There's there's not many moments that my mind is completely still and empty. But yeah, to your point, you don't have to be there to do it. And sound is incredibly powerful. There are so many. That's a world all in itself, which we'll also pull in at the retreat, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, there'll be, Nyana, the neuroscientist, has a workshop on sound as well.
Amazing.
And then every evening we'll be doing different sound experiences to take them through. And one will be a sound journey, and you can actually move through a whole journey of different hertz and different frequencies to activate different parts of healing, and whether it's deep calm or whether it's actually pulling things to the surface. It can be emotional healing, physical healing. It's vast, but so powerful.
Yeah, no, I love that because one of the ways that I got sort of into what I do now is when I would do sound healings and I would have these experiences of like, wow, I needed like a way in, right? Like an induction, as we say in hypnosis. So the sound would really do that for me.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I didn't do it. I was able to like get there faster, and then I can have this experience. So hypnosis is similar in that like there's an induction. Someone brings you from, beta state down to hopefully theta. Sometimes, we're not doing an MRI. So, but, there are signs that you are relaxed. So either into alpha or theta, and each one has, different benefits and different, states that you want to be in for certain interventions. They're, hypnotherapeutically. But I found that through sound, I was able to go there really, really fast. Yeah. And it it allowed me to just be like, actually, you know what? I can meditate. Now I'm working on a different way of doing it, but it's such a like great intro level to people. So I imagine for your retreat, it'll be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sound, it's just the frequency moves through your whole body, right? Like we are energy, and it's vibration through all of that and disrupting all of the chemicals within our being. So it can, disrupting can be a good thing too. Not saying that it's like wreaking havoc, but it can do that. Actually, one of the most powerful experiences I've had before was during a sound journey in Sydney, back when I lived there. And there was this beautiful organization that came together I discovered them because when I was doing the people operations work, they provided what would be therapy, let's just say, to summarize it. And they were looking at doing it in different ways for employees, where it was kind of like what's that called when you have an amount on a card that you can just go up and pay with?
Oh, like a flex spend.
Yeah, there's a term for that, but that's
like
not
an HR
important.
term.
No, it's like if you have like a tab. That's what it is. You have a tab. Oh my goodness, simple terms. But
bar term. Okay, I was going HR. I'm like, I won't know if it's HR, but bar maybe.
So yeah, you'd have a tab. You can go and utilize different services, and that way it was very anonymous. But they had everything from seeing, a therapist one-on-one to these sound journeys. And I went in, and they took us on a journey. It was about an hour long. You laid there, you covered your eyes. They had a bit of essential oils for us. But that journey went on what's similar to like a movie, if you think about a slow beginning, a build-up, a climax, and an end. And it was so powerful for me that when that climax hit, I actually had a panic attack.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it was happening because I hadn't had one before. But my heart was racing, and I was laying there, and it started to like really tighten. I was in pain, and I started to sweat a bit, and I didn't really know what to do. And then your brain's kicking in, being like, well, don't get up and disrupt people. I'm not sure what to do, but I think I might need help. And I fortunately was able to breathe through it. But it was honestly one of the most scary and powerful moments I've ever experienced in my life.
Wow. So, the first thing I'm thinking is like, that's incredible that sound can do that. But you were okay. You were able to get through.
I was, yeah. I was fortunately, I was able to breathe through it, but I was very confused, and I spoke to them afterwards about it because I was like, I don't know what just happened. I'm like, was something wrong? Did I do something wrong? So like, how did this happen? And then through explaining everything and all of the what was occurring in my body, they were like, oh, I think you actually you had a panic attack while you were in there. So it invoked so much within me and sound is a big part of my life. But it's still, for that to occur, it's wild.
It's wild, and it really shows the power of things that we are like, okay, sound or breath. And I've had really, really powerful experiences in both. Like I would say one of the most wild experiences I had was just a breathwork class in like at this yoga studio that was like in a shopping center at Marbella. Like, you know, and it wasn't like I was like in one of the, like, I wasn't expecting a mystical experience. I just was like, oh, it'll be a good, you know, like thing to do this evening. And I went with a girlfriend, and we just went to like a breath work. And I've done a lot of breath work, and I have a range of experiences, right? But this was like psychedelic. I mean, it was, I was gone from my body, and I was like, I have to, you know, like I have to get up after this. And I'm like looking around. I'm like, that was insanely powerful. And I kind of half-ass breath work sometimes. Like if it's really hard, I'm like, okay. I was just like breathing. And I'm like, how incredible that sound or breath can take us into a completely altered state. I mean, a completely altered state, or induce, you know, a physiological, like a panic attack.
Definitely. And I think the key thing that you said in that whole statement was that you weren't expecting anything.
Right.
Yeah, because as soon as there's a whole like Buddhism behind this around expectations and suffering, and I won't go into that tangent, but it's when we create expectations around something, which is the dangerous part of all of the science behind the practices and the knowledge. It's beautiful, but we also can't cross the line where it's like, okay, well, if I do A, B, C, then automatically I will get D, E, F.
Yeah.
Because the expectations can be tricky, and what happens to me when I go through breathwork will be different than what happens to you when you go through breathwork, because of our own beings, our own physical, our own histories, our own minds, and everything. So it's really beautiful when you can utilize knowledge to, of course, create scenarios that will be beneficial for you, or use practices that will be beneficial for you, but not have these like extremely strict expectations of what will come out of that. And when you can let expectations go is when a lot of the magic will happen.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, because it's so true. Anytime that, you know, I feel that I go into something with like a try or an expectation, it doesn't have the same effect. Because, you know, my experience could be really different from yours, but my experience could be really different from mine, you know, a previous week or a different place, or and it has been so different. So that's what I do love these processes, because you never know what you're going to get. But I love to analyze afterwards of like,
exactly.
I love to analyze after, like, okay, why did that happen? Or like, what was happening? You know, what was that related to? And I guess that's the therapeutic part of me, the part that always is trying to find meaning. But I think it's really important, and thank you for bringing it up, that you kind of go through the process first and then look for meaning.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you treat it like an experiment, right? Where
Yes.
you have, there's a specific term for that, but like a theory essentially, or an idea of what will occur. And then you run the experiment, and then you analyze afterwards to understand what did actually happen.
It's actually a scientific process.
It is a scientific process.
The scientific process, even.
That's so true. I never actually thought of it that way until just now.
No, but it's interesting, because I actually it helped me, that process actually kind of helped me change my approach to working with clients, because especially with, you know, therapy culture, like it's so focused on analysis and like, okay, why did this happen? Why do I do this? And it's great information, but how is it showing up for you now? Is it showing up as an anxiety attack or a trigger when you see something? It's sending you in this neural pathway. Let's do a thing first. Let's actually use a process to change that, get it to show up in your life differently, kind of get you out of the burning house. And then like a couple sessions later, let's look at why, like once we've actually dealt with it, instead of like, let's find why and then what, right? Or let's create expectations and not match them with our experience.
Yeah, definitely. You have to go on the journey.
You do. Yeah, you do. But in closing, because we only have a few minutes left, I wanted to, just ask you, where is Yogi Social going? What's next?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think for me, the dream that I have when I think of Yogi Social and what it can accomplish is bringing, yes, the science behind these practices to light so that people can understand why they're doing it and the impacts that it has. But I don't want people to have to come back over and over again to be learning that knowledge. I see it as gifting this knowledge to a group of individuals and then them going and gifting that knowledge to another group of individuals and this beautiful ripple effect. So the retreat is one thing, of course. It will be amazing and quite experiential. But I would like to also do it on a more of a micro scale, making it more accessible. In beautiful Portugal, I want to make sure that both expats and locals can obtain this knowledge and use it. So looking at doing maybe like day events in the area and being able to give like micro versions of what this retreat would be. And then from there, very open to the ideas of collaboration and how does this knowledge complement other pieces of knowledge? Maybe how can it be utilized in hypnotherapy, learning from each other? There's movement, there's sound and music, and everything under the umbrella of wellness is so complementary to each other.
Yeah.
And I would like to ensure that I keep a holistic view on it as well and just learn more about different modalities that can complement each other and see what flows from there. But the idea very much is a collective. So
I love that.
I would love for other people to have ideas, bring it to the table, take things on their own and run it. And to really grow out in that way that we're a community supporting each other and sharing all of this knowledge.
I love that. And I love that there's an intention, but you're very open to how it grows. And I find when we start things like that way and they take a life of their own, it can be way bigger and more exciting or deeper than we imagined. So I'm very excited for you.
I'm one person and I have a heart and beliefs and intentions, but you need many. It's one person doesn't, one person can change the world, of course, but I was like, one person doesn't change the world. But to me, one person isn't, my way of being is not the way of being. I have ideas and experiences and I can share that and learn knowledge, but it's the culmination of all of our different stories and our different beings that create this big, beautiful oneness amongst us. And that's really important to me to ensure it's spread.
I love that. And I look forward to, collaborating or joining your events. And I'm just so happy you're in Ericeira. Yeah. And I think you're in the right place because there's a lot of people tapping into this sort of knowledge in different ways because it's all the different perspectives. So
exactly, yeah. And all of it should be shared.
Yes, yes. Well, I am so pleased to meet you and to get to learn more about you and to have had you here today.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, I just want to ask where people can find you, like your social tags and all that.
That's a great question. So Instagram is the Yogi Social, and then we also have a website you can find under the same name as well.
So it's theyyogisocial.com.
The Yogi Social, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yes,
and I look forward to more conversations like this.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure.